Do you see it now? Do you see my slide? First slide.
Yes po, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, the background of the study. Tama, okay. So, in the new format, after the title is the rationale of the research paper. Pero basically, ang rationale is talking about the background of the study. Okay, so in terms of the background of the study, its purpose is to introduce important facets or areas or what are the features that establish the general context where the study revolves. So parang it gives us a bird's eye view, ano ang tungkol sa study na to. And the primary objective of the rationale is to establish the research gap. So there are 4 elements of the background of the study, ano. Sa ibang kasi sa ibang mga textbooks, background of the study ang ginagamit, pero sa atin sa new format tinawag itong rationale. Okay, pero it means the same thing, okay? And the purpose of that is, ulitin ko, to provide the general context of the study, and particularly at the end is to establish the research gap. So the first element of the background of the study, or in other words, is still significant area of research up to the present. Yung inaaral mo ba is still relevant? Okay, so there's an issue of relevance. After this slide, I'll show you an example how the background of the study is written in as far as the 4 elements of it are present or are concerned. So ulitin natin, the current state of the field talks about the relevance of the study up to the present. Basically, that's very important, no, to establish. Number 2, what are the current and conventional practices in addressing the issue? So if it's still relevant, what has been done to address the issue? So ito yung highlight ng related literature, di ba? Merong pinaka-highlight in which it talks about the most current and the most conventional practice or research study that has been done so far to address. And the third one is the research gap, or the question of what has not been done yet. So ulitin ko, una, is it significant up to the present? Pangalawa, what studies so far have been conducted to address it? And what is missing? That's the research gap. And of course, it would end with the contribution of your present study. And the question is, did you fill the gap or the research gap that you established in the paper? So itong 4 na element na ito ay dapat makita o mabasa natin sa papel. Not necessarily sasabihin mo yan na verbatim. Hindi siya fill in the blanks na, yes, this is still significant area. Hindi ganoon. Kailangan implied doon sa laman ng rationale mo. Let's have an example taken from an actual study. It's a math research. Sabi dito, many forms of instruction, both traditional and alternative, have been introduced to develop students' mathematical logical skills. One approach that continues to be widely used in Asia is Singapore math. Though many studies have attempted to substantiate its effectiveness, then highlight niya yung mga literature, sino-sino, 2015, 2014, there remains a dearth of empirical studies that have investigated the effectiveness of Singapore math in the Philippines. As Corpus 2015 argued, there is a need to conduct more studies on approaches that will help Filipino students become equipped with the necessary mathematical skills which are at par with their Asian counterparts. Following that suggestion, this study investigated the effects of Singapore math on developing the mathematical skills of Filipino students in selected public high schools in the Philippines. So this is how the background of the study is established or written. Now, isa-isahin nga natin yung ating elements. No? Balikan natin yung elements na yon. Unahin ko ulit, the current state of the field. Ano daw yung conventional and current practices? Ano yung research gap? And did the research fill the gap? Okay, number 1. What is the current state of the field that is stated here?
Walang
Usually,
signal.
yun naman yung una. Yes, Miss Christine? Christine, you were saying something?
Ay. Sorry, sir. Napindot lang po, sir.
Okay, sige. So what is the current state of the field? So usually yun yung unang part ng sentence o ng paragraph, di ba? Ang sabi dito, up to present is we use the Singapore math, no, to develop students' mathematical logical skills. Traditional and alternative, pero ang focus is the effectiveness of Singapore math, whatever that method is. I'm not familiar with Singapore math because mas familiar ako sa Chaisto in Talavera. But this study talks about Singapore math as an effective approach to developing students' mathematical skills. So the current study is, it's still significant because it is established na it is being widely used, no? Not only in certain countries of the world, but in Asia. So klarong-klaro. Yung unang sentence hanggang pangalawa talks about the significance of the current investigation because it's still being used up to the present. The second question is, what are the current and conventional practices to address? Ang sabi dito, many studies have attempted to substantiate its effectiveness. Then highlight niya yung studies by 2015 and 2014. So ibig sabihin, itong study ni Higgs ni ito daw yung mga studies na is the research gap. The research gap says there remains a dearth very few empirical studies have been investigated this Singapore math in the Philippines. So malinaw kaagad yung research gap niya. Meron pero kokonti daw ang nag-aral pa ng effectiveness ng Singapore math sa Pilipinas. Tapos dinagdagan pa niya ng research gap ng sabi ni Corpus noong 2015 sa kanyang suggestion, there is a need to conduct more studies and approaches, etc., blah, 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 blah. So that is the research gap that is being established here. At inend niya yung sentence ng, with this study, the effects of Singapore math can be further investigated using select public high schools in the Philippines. So yun yung contribution niya. So in a single paragraph, you were able to establish the elements of the background. Nandiyan na yung current state of the field, nandiyan na yung current practices and conventional practices to address it, nandiyan yung research gap, at nandiyan yung how did you fill the gap. So you don't need to have a very, very lengthy rationale or introduction just to state your point. Yung iba, pag nakakita ka ng proposal, ang dami-daming mga mother statements. May mga education for all, ganon. UNESCO education for all, Hindi ano ba yung pinupunto? It's like a song, di ba? Ang haba ng introduction, 1 minuto. Do you like a song na ang introduction ay 1 minuto? Parang tipang-tip ka na yung gitara, no? Yung gitara, yung introduction ng gitara, nakaka-1 minuto na, hindi pa kumakanta. Di ba? Ayaw naman natin ng wala man lang introduction, di ba? Yung tipong pag-play mo ng playlist, pasok ka agad yung boses. Hindi mo naman napagandaan yon. So there are songs, di ba? Napansin nyo, there are songs that lacks introduction. There are songs also that are overly introduced. But sing a topic is possible para maintindihan lang ng estudyante, anong reader, ano yung general context ng pag-aaral na ito at ano yung research gap na kailangan mong i-address. So usually ganyan lang kaikli yung background of the study. Okay? So with the background of the study, alam mo na yung research problem. You can now and its specific questions once you were able to establish the background. Okay, so let's proceed with that. So identifying and stating the research problem. What is to be investigated? And what are the variables to be investigated and their relationships? Okay, so iterate lang natin ito. Number one is, before you state the research problem, you conduct preliminary research using all available resources, print and non-print. So this is what we call exhaustive, intensive, and extensive literature review of print and non-print media, online or offline resources which are available at the university libraries of most universities. Prepare a concept map, usually with the general topic inside the circle, and then magba-branch out lang yon. Pero not necessarily kung malinaw naman na sa'yo kung ano yung problems at variables mo, you don't need to draw a concept map. Then, identify the general research problem. If you provide a clear explanation of the problem as well as its causes, evidence that supports the existence of the identified problem, and definition of concepts relevant to the problem. So to make this more clear, let's have an example. Suppose this is my theory. Sample lang ito, no? This is a quantitative design. So we are testing the theory of the influence of test anxiety to math performance. So it's not just anxiety, it's not general anxiety, but anxiety while taking the test, during the test, or after the test. May instrument tayo dyan, available. Then, does it affect performance? Not just performance, but math performance. Kasi may mga bata na hindi naman anxious pag English yung exam. May mga estudyante na hindi naman anxious pag science yung test. Nagiging anxious lang siya pag math yung exam. May mga estudyante rin na hindi naman anxious sa klase. Pag nagdi-discuss, okay naman sila, relax na relax. Pag nakikita yung teacher, relax naman. Pag narinig na ang salitang, let's have a quiz, ninenervyos na. So that's test anxiety. Nawawala na sa sa ulirat, nawawala na sa wisyo, eka nga. Sinabi lang na may quiz na na nagulo na yung daigdig niya. Pero nung habang nagdi-discuss, naintindihan niya, nung nagtanong si teacher ng sino ang volunteer, pumunta pa sa board, nag-solve pa, nung nagkamali, okay lang, na-correct niya. Pero bakit pagka mag-a-announce na ng exam, tumataas na yung anxiety? So ang question natin ay, does anxiety in taking the test related to the actual math performance? So given this model, what is our general statement of the problem? Okay, so the general statement or general research question is derived from the main problem of the study. It must contain words related to quantitative research such as effects or relationships, because this is quantitative, as an example. Then the specific research questions are anchored on the general research question. It helps us in collecting data, gathering references, organizing the paper, and drawing conclusions. So ulitin ko, yung model natin is, we want to find out whether test anxiety is related or influencing math performance. Pero hindi to experimental, ha? This is not experimental, because if this is experimental, you will allow students to engage in activities that will make them anxious deliberately, and that is unethical. Okay? So let's have this example. Ulitin ko, this is our model. Test anxiety is our independent variable. This is the assumed cause. And math performance is our DV. This is the assumed effect or outcome. So how do we state the general question here? Ito, hypothetical lang. General statement of the problem. The present study aims to examine the relationship between test anxiety to the examination performance in mathematics of senior students of Cabado National High School. Kaya naman pala sila kinakabahan, pati pangalan ng eskwelahan, kapangalan, So hypothetical lang 'yan, wala akong maisip kasi baka mamaya mamali yung exam, yung school. So nilagyan ko na lang ng Cabado National High School or KNHS. Nakalagay na sa general statement of the problem yung math as the context. Nakalagay na rin sa general statement of the problem yung coverage niya, senior, no? Not just high school but senior students. And then nakalagay na yung school. Pero sa thesis, pero sa publication, minsan hindi sinasabi yung pangalan ng eskwelahan. Sinasabi lang ay in one senior high school in the province of the Philippines. Ganun. Hindi natin ina-identify. Pero sa thesis, sa requirement mo, sa proposal, nilalagay yan. Para alam natin kung saan mo gagawin. But in the final paper for publication, it's usually held anonymously. So ano daw yung general statement? Examining the relationship between anxiety and exam performance. So with that general statement of the problem, ano yung mga specific statement of the problem? Una, descriptive. Pangalawa, inferential. So the first research question or statement of the problem talks about describing the level of test anxiety and examination performance in math of senior students. So in other words, given this model, the first thing to do is to describe the IB and the DB. Kaya ang unang question natin ay, what is the level of test anxiety and the examination performance in math of senior students of KNHS. So ulitin ko, the first specific statement of the problem usually is to describe IB and DV. So if you have IB, moderator, DV, yun din ang iyong statement of the problem. If you have mediating, isasama mo siya doon sa describing part. So the first statement of the problem is descriptive statistics. Descriptive problem lang siya. Yung pangalawa, dahil ang general statement of the problem natin ay relationship, then there must be inference. Inferential question ang tawag doon. So, nakabase rin ito sa general statement of the problem. Dahil ang general statement natin is to examine the relationship, ang ating statement of the problem is specific. Number 2 is there a significant relationship between test anxiety and examination performance in math of senior students? So in other words, with this statement of the problem, we need to measure two variables. The level of test anxiety and their exam performance, and then the statistics to be done is to correlate them and find out if there exists a significant correlation. At nakalagay din dyan kung sino ang ating sample, senior students ng eskwelahang Cabado National High School. So pag nakita mo na yung statement of the problem, alam mo na kung ano yung kahihinatnan ng research. Alam mo na kung ano yung method. Correlation lang ito. Ano to, self-survey lang ito kasi anxiety. Magpapa-exam kasi may exam performance. Math kasi nakalagay yung subject. At senior students. So a lot of information has already been provided dito pa lang sa statement of the problem. Okay? So each research design, quantitative in that nature, has a different way of stating the research question. May templates tayo. For beginners, we can use these templates as our guide knowing how to write our research question. Let's have examples. How do we write specific research questions for descriptive research designs? Okay. Usually they begin with the phrases, how often, how frequently, how many or how much, what is, to what extent, what proportion, what percentage, etc., etc. Halimbawa, your topic is about Facebook use. You want to describe this phenomenon among your students, pero descriptive lang. So, the possible descriptive research question would be, how often do students use Facebook in 1 week? Or in a day? Depende kung ano yung interval. How many hours do students spend on Facebook per week? Or what percentage of USHS male and female students uses Facebook? So lahat ng yan, descriptive research lang. Your purpose is to describe the phenomenon as it exists. No? Remember last time nung discuss natin yung iba't ibang uri ng quantitative research design, ito yung example nun. So those are the templates, no? How often, how many, how much, what proportion, what percentage. Pero i-specify mo lang kung anong gusto mong malaman. Okay? The second type of design is correlational. So how do we state specific research questions for correlational research? Remember that correlational research measures only relationship but not causalities, because there is no manipulation of variables. So whatever relationship exists between the IB and the DB is just a linear relationship, but there's no direct causation. So how do we begin? We begin with the template, is there a relationship? Or pwede namang, what is the relationship? Example, is there a relationship between student anxiety and exam performance? Or what is the relationship between the length of the review and examination scores? And is there a relationship between the amount of time spent in using Facebook and self-esteem? So dalawang variables na sinukat mo using two different measures, and you want to find out whether linear relationship exists, pwedeng positive related, pwedeng negative related, or pwedeng no relationship. But what the template that we usually do is we start with, is there a relationship? And of course, the answer there is not discrete na yes or no. Diba? Nakakatawa minsan sa undergraduate ang sagot lang ay yes. I-analyze, ano? Is there a relationship between students and science and performance? Conclusion, yes. So hindi yan yes or no question, ano? Although it seems to be a yes or no question, it's more than that. No? Kailangan mo dyan ng data collection, data analysis, data interpretation, etc., etc., and discussion. Hindi siya kasimple na yes or no lang ang sagot dyan. Or, is there a relationship between students' anxiety and exam performance? Hindi pwedeng there's none ang sagot. But that's how we write. So yung research mo ay correlational, papalitan mo lang yung variables. Palitan mo lang yung anxiety, kung ano man yung IV mo. So usually, ang pattern natin ay kung ano yung IV, siya din ang mauna dun sa sentence o dun sa question. Para yung line of inquiry, line of thought ay congruent doon sa model. Huwag mong pagbaliktarin yung DV sa IV. Okay? O paano naman daw yung research questions for ex post facto research? So, ulitin natin, ano ang ex post facto? We try to explain the cause, but it has already occurred. Nangyari na, di ba? Example natin noong nakaraan. The question must not suggest experimentation or manipulation of variables. So what we do in comparative research is, using ex post facto research design, we compare the variables of those who are exposed and those who are not exposed to the assumed cause. Okay, example. Digital literacy. Gusto nating malaman kung may pagkakaiba yung uri ng curriculum sa pagiging digitally literate ng mga estudyante. At isa sa nakikitang dahilan ay yung mga taga-science high school at saka yung regular secondary students, dahil magkaiba sila ng curriculum, magkaiba sila ng level ng digital literacy. At yun yung nakikita nating isang dahilan that could have explained it. Kaya ex post facto. Okay? So paano natin i-state yun? Una, descriptive. Are science high school students and regular secondary students digitally literate. So, bibigyan mo sila ng digital literacy test. And then, may scores. Then, may interpretation. Oh. Siyempre, yung instrument na ginamit mo, sasabihin nun, kung ang average score nila ay ganito, high. Kung ito naman, low. Depende kung ano yung gagamitin mong score. Pero yung pangalawa, ang mismong comparison. Alagay, is there a difference on the digital literacy scores between science high school students and regular secondary students? So in other words, you are trying to explain differences in the scores of digital literacy by attributing it to the kind of high school that they are exposed. One group ay science high school, another group is regular secondary students group. Bibigyan mo sila parehas ng test on digital literacy, then i-compare mo yung kanilang mean scores. What if ang result parehas lang? Oh, what if ang result ay parehas lang? Ang average halimbawa ng science high school ay 65. 65.3 naman sa regular secondary students. So what does it imply? Ma'am Maylene, what does it mean? After ng pagbibigay ko ng test, parehas lang yung scores nila sa digital literacy instrument.
Sir, pa-repeat nga po. Kababalik ko lang po.
O halimbawa, no? Ang aking assumption kasi, ang dependent variable ko ay digital literacy. So sabi ko sa teorya ko, yung digital literacy kasi exposure yan sa computers, exposure yan sa media, at ang aking hypothesis is baka kaya magkaiba sila ng digital literacy dahil magkaiba sila ng curriculum na pinanggalingan. So, ex post facto, nag-exist na o nangyari na yung cause. Gusto ko lang aralin kung tama ba na naging cause ito o isa sa mga possible cause. Pero hindi ako pwede mag-experiment. Ngayon, bibigyan ko ng test na digital literacy yung mga taga-science high school at yung kanilang counterpart na taga-ordinary or regular secondary schools. Iisa lang yung test na ibibigay ko. Halimbawa, hypothetical, 1 to 100. The higher the score, the higher the digital literacy. Pero syempre, hindi pwedeng isang estudyante lang, di ba? A group of students, like 100 students sa science high school, 100 students din sa regular secondary students. Parehas ang dami, parehas ang level, halimbawa, 4th year or grade 10, grade 10. Then pagdating sa mean, nung kinumpit ko yung mean scores, parehas lang. Anong ibig sabihin nun?
Sir po, para sa akin, kung parehas po yung magiging mean nila, parang yung curriculum ay hindi po siya nakaka-affect doon po sa digital literacy nila.
Yan. So, hindi ko masasabi, tama no? Hindi ko masasabi yon na ang curriculum ay hindi nakaka-apekto hanggat hindi ko siya patutunayan quantitatively. Paano ko mapapatunayan kung curriculum nga yun? O di mag-compare ako ng dalawang curriculum. Yun ang ex post facto. I will compare a group of students exposed to 2 different curriculums and then try to find out which curriculum is better. Now, if you found out naman that the science high school students have higher scores, then curriculum affects digital literacy. So you cannot just guess, no? You cannot just have intuitions na feeling ko, hindi pwede. Kailangan natin ng data. So one way to do that is to do a quantitative research. Ganon yung research question natin. So ang kadalasan na research question sa ex post facto ay, is there a difference? Yung correlation naman ay, is there a relationship? Okay? Yun namang descriptive, how much, how frequently, what is. Okay? So yung 1 ay yung 3, another example yan. Ayan, pwede mo rin alarin. Using the 4 components of digital literacy, what are the strengths and weaknesses of science high school students and regular secondary students? So there is always a comparison. Sir, paano kung halimbawa ang paniniwala ko ay gender ang naka-influensya, ex post facto pa din yun. Because gender cannot be manipulated. Gender is existing already. Eh sir, paano kung ang gusto kong aralin ay educational attainment of the parents? Because I believe that if parents with higher educational attainment can provide more materials to develop digital literacy, o di ganun din. You give scores or you give a test and group students according to sino-sino estudyante ang tatay elementary graduate lang, sino ang tatay ay high school graduate lang, sino ang tatay ay college, and then you compare the means using statistics, which will be discussed later in our class. So if there's a significant difference, you will infer na nakaapekto nga. Nakaapekto, ibig sabihin past tense. Kasi nga, the cause has already occurred. Pero pwede mo pa ring alamin kung nakaapekto nga or hindi. To some extent. Pero ulitin natin, like correlation, ex post facto research designs are not direct causation because there is no manipulation of variables. There is no experimentation. Okay? And the last one is, how do we specify research questions for experimental and quasi? Parehas lang sila, no? For quasi and experimental research question, you make use of the same question. So dito, there is manipulation of variables so we can have cause and effect relationship. Lalong-lalo na si true experimental. So how do we state the specific question? Ayan. Is there significant post-test gain on students' academic performance? Lalong-lalo na kung one group design ka lang. So if you remember in your high school, meron tayong tinatawag na one sample design. Sabihin, yung grupo mo, retest mo, sila din yung pinost-test mo. So, may post-test gain daw ba sila? Yung isa namang uri ng experimental ay meron kang control at meron kang treatment. Dalawang grupo, hinati mo, pero ganoon din ang question. Is there significant difference between the post-test gains of the control and the treatment group? Nagko-compare ka din like ex post facto, but this time, what you are trying to compare are the scores of students under manipulation. Meron ng control variable, meron ng control group, at meron ng experimental group. Okay? Pero parehas na the best way to determine the effectiveness or the cause and effect relationship is to compare mean scores. Ano man yung measure mo ng variable na yan. So usually it's a post-test. So sa number 2, malinaw na may post-test si control, may post-test si treatment, ikukumpara niya. Ngayon, pagkaparehas lang ang post-test ng control at treatment, the independent variable doesn't work. Because it has no effect. Pero dapat, bago mag-umpisa ang experiment, na-discuss ko na itong nakaraan, dapat equal lang sila. That's why randomization is very important. Baka ang mai-assign mo na treatment group magagaling na kaagad without measuring their prior knowledge. Tapos sila pa yung bigyan mo ng new method, it will result na mas magaling yung treatment group, not because of your method, but because even at the beginning of the experiment, they are better. If you remember my example, no, na mas malaki naman yung halaman talaga dun sa experimental group, nilagyan mo fertilizer, tapos naaarawan pa, maganda pa yung soil, tapos inaawit-awitan mo pa, kinakanta-kantahan mo pa, binabati-bati mo pa ng good morning. Yung control group naman, hindi mo na binigyan ng fertilizer, konti lang ang tubig, konti pa ang exposure sa sunlight, mabuhangin pa yung lupa, tapos hindi mo pa binakuran, kinain ng insekto yung ibang dahon, ang post-test mo ay number of leaves at the end of the experiment. So lalabas, your treatment group is better because it has more leaves. Pero dahil kaya sa fertilizer, hindi. Dahil ang daming variables na hindi kinontrol. Kaya mahirap yung experimental. yung true experimental because you have to control for all variables kasi optimal control dapat. So for experimental designs, I think quasi-experimental will do. Lalo-lalo na kung ang subjects mo ay humans o ang subject mo ay students, hindi pwedeng true experimental. Unless, sabi ko nga, yung example natin is you are working for an experiment sponsored by a multi-billionaire or a multi-billion medical or pharmaceutical company that can afford to provide sustenance to the subjects under investigation. Yung kaya mong i-house, no, yung mga samples mo for a long period of time free of everything. But for classroom researches, I think we can do up to quasi-experimental studies. Okay? So malinaw ba yung how to state the research question for descriptive, correlation, ex post facto, and experimental designs? Now let's go to the hypothesis. So after you have stated your research question, you can now formulate your hypothesis. Okay, so what is hypothesis? So hypothesis is the suggested answer to the problem. Okay? So yung tanong mo na, is there a relationship? Na tanong, itong hypothesis daw, ito yung suggestion mo na sagot. It is defined as an expectation or prediction about the events based on generalizations of the assumed relationship between variables. It is a shrewd guess that is formulated to explain observed facts and to guide in further investigations. So sa Tagalog, hinuha yata ang Tagalog ng hypothesis. Yung educated guess. Okay? So what are the characteristics of hypothesis? So plural hypothesis, pag dalawa o higit pa ang iyong conjecture. Number one, it should conjecture upon a relationship between two or more variables. So manggagaling daw siya o nakabase sa relationship between two, kung IBDB ka lang, o kaya naman ay IB moderating DV o IB mediating DV, it is based on that relationship. Now, yung hypothesis mo na yan. It should be clearly stated and unambiguously. Klaro dapat, malinaw, in the form of a declarative sentence. So yung research question, patanong, therefore ang hypothesis, pasagot na. Dahil ito na yung answer. Okay? More importantly, it should be testable. That is, it should be possible to restate it in operational form which can be evaluated based on data. Testable means verifiable. We have data to support that hypothesis. Okay? So there are two types of hypotheses, but we usually use the first one, no, in research, the null. The second one is the opposite, which is the alternate hypothesis. So the null hypothesis denoted by H sub O is statistical hypothesis that state that there's no difference between a parameter and a specific value, or there's no difference between two parameters. So siya yung nagda-doubt to be true ka. No, this is the hypothesis to be tested and it represents what the researcher doubts to be true. Mamaya may example tayo. The alternative hypothesis denoted by H sub A naman is a statistical hypothesis that state that a specific difference between a parameter and a specific value or that there is a difference between two parameters. Ito naman yung operational statement of the theory that the researcher believes to be true. Yung isa, you doubt it to be true. Yung isa naman is, that is what you believe to be true. And that's you try to prove. But we prefer to use the null hypothesis kasi ang test of significance natin is whether to reject or not to reject the null hypothesis. Okay, so in statistical terms, may meaning yon, ano? Kaya ang statement natin sa ating hypothesis ay null. Pero kabaliktaran lang siya. Ang null, sabi ng null, walang pagkakaiba. Sabi naman ng alternative, hindi, meron. Pero hindi na natin i-discuss dito yung mga type 1, type 2 error in hypothesis kasi magmumukha na tayong statistics class. So yung pagkakaiba niyan, further, sa susunod na semester natin na aralin. Ano yung type 1 error, ano yung type 2 error, ano yung level of significance. But in as far as hypothesis and research is concerned, ito ang ibig sabihin ng null hypothesis. The null says there's no difference or there's no relationship. The alternative says there is difference or there is relationship. Or pwede din natin sabihin, null hypothesis says there's no effect. Alternative says, or alternate, parehas lang yon, says there is an effect. Let's have an example. Suppose a classroom teacher hypothesizes that using lecture method in teaching a specific lesson is the same as teaching it using demonstration method in terms of students' learning. Sabi niya, wala namang pagkakaiba yan. Mapa-lecture o mapa-demo, parehas lang ng amount of learning. So ano ang kanyang null hypothesis? Mathematically, ang null hypothesis niya is mu lecture is equal to mu. Mu means mean. Mean. So in other words, yung average score daw ng mga estudyante na tinuruan ng lecture, equal lang daw sa average score ng mga tinuruan ng demo. Kaya equal dahil there's no difference. Nagets niyo? Sabi ng null, there is no difference. Kaya mathematically, ang symbol niya, equal. Okay? This means that the performance of the students who were taught using both methods of teaching are the same or not different. Okay? With this, there are three possible alternate hypotheses. The first one is, no, they're not equal. Generic yon. The mean score of the students using lecture method is not equal. One is higher, but I don't know. Ngayon, yung pangalawa, very sure ka. Meron kang a priori expectation. Kaya ang sabi mo, lecture is better than demo. That's also alternative. Ang tawag dyan, directional. Kasi meron na siyang direction. Greater than daw si lecture. This means that students using lecture is higher than using demo. The other one is directional, pero lower naman daw. Lecture is lower than demo. So yung tatlo na yan ay parehong alternative hypothesis for the first example na null hypothesis saying mean lecture is equal to mean demonstration. So ano ang gagamitin kong alternate hypothesis? Depende yon. Kung anong direksyon ng null hypothesis. So meron tayong tinatawag na directional at non-directional. Non-directional, two-tailed. So sa statistics, specify natin to, pero ngayon, habang ano muna, ito lang muna ipaliwanag natin. Alam niyo yung normal curve, di ba? Naaral niyo yun, no? Kahit na yung MS guidance, yung psychology graduates, alam nila ito. No? Yung normal curve, yung ang tumbok yung nasa gitna, then konti lang ang nasa kaliwa, konti lang ang nasa kanan. So two-tailed yon. Kung yung hypothesis mo daw ay hindi mo alam kung anong direksyon yung difference. Is it on the right or on the left of the curve? So when you don't have a priori expectation regarding the value to expect, then you use the two-tailed. So dito sa example natin, ang two-tailed ay yung number 1. In either direction kasi ito eh. Lecture could be better than demo. Demo could be better than lecture. So ang sabi mo, they are not equal. Okay? So the first alternate hypothesis in this table is written in two-tailed form or non-directional. Yung number 2 at number 3 ay one-tailed. Parehas silang directional. So pag sinabing directional, the researcher has an a priori expectation about the sample value he expects to observe. So example ito, you believe that demo is better than lecture because your theory says naririnig na nila, nakikita pa nila is better than naririnig lang. Therefore, ang alternative hypothesis mo is mean demo is better than mean lecture. Meron ka ng a priori expectation of the result. Therefore, one-tailed lang yon. So may kinalaman yung one-tailed or two-tailed kung i-reject mo kasi o hindi mo i-reject yung null hypothesis. Magkaiba ng critical value pagkagagamit na tayo ng statistics. Kaya importante yon na ang iyong bang null hypothesis ay ang iyong alternate hypothesis ba ay two-tailed or one-tailed lamang. So the details of that, as I've said, will be discussed in statistics class. But in the meantime, ito lang muna, null, then ang bawat null ay mayroong alternate hypothesis. Bakit? Pag ni-reject mo ang null hypothesis, ang sagot, si alternate hypothesis. Tama? Pag ni-reject mo, statistically, si null hypothesis at sinabi mong, ang null hypothesis mo kasi there is no. Tapos ni-reject mo, o di there is, yun si alternate. That's why you have to explain and specify also the alternate hypothesis. Okay? So, last few slides na tayo. Mabilis, no? How do we now state the hypothesis from the research question for the specific designs that we have? Simpleng-simple na lang to. Kasi gagawin mo na lang declarative yung research question na nauna. Tapos gagawin mo siyang null. Gagawin mo lang siyang no. O example natin, ito example natin kanina sa correlation. Is there a relationship between students' anxiety and exam performance? So pwede nating dagdagan ng salitang significant. Pwede naman. Is there a significant relationship between students' anxiety and exam performance? The answer is not yes and not no, but it should be stated this way. There is no significant relationship between students' anxiety and exam performance. So parang inulit mo lang. Pero bago mo ulitin, dapat klaro yung nauna. That's why statement of the question is very important because doon nakabase ang yung magiging hypothesis. So kung malabo si research question, malabo din si hypothesis. Kung hindi testable si research question, hindi rin testable si null hypothesis. So there is no significant relationship between students' anxiety and exam performance. Ano yung alternate? Ma'am Christine, can you give me the alternate hypothesis for this example? Can you provide one?
It depend po sa research question po, sir.
O, halimbawa ito, is there a significant relationship between anxiety and exam? Then ang null mo, there is no. Ano naman lang yung alternate hypothesis? Diba babalik na rin lang natin, alternate lang eh. So ano yung alternate? Pero hindi mo alam kung anong direksyon. Hindi mo alam kung positive or negative. Sir Jetro, will you try? How do we state the alternate hypothesis for this null hypothesis that you see on the screen?
Sir, try lang po.
Okay.
Po dun sa may research question. So I think the alternate hypothesis is there is a significant relationship.
Kailan ka saan, sir?
Ano po, for me, the alternate hypothesis po is there is significant relationship.
Okay, tama. There is. Babalik ta rin mo lang. Kasi ang null mo, there is no. So ang alternate mo, there is.
Yes po.
Ngayon, kung mayroon kang a priori expectation at base sa literature, ay alam mo na ang batang anxious ay mababa ang exam performance, ano ang magiging alternate hypothesis? Von, will you try? Sabi ng literature ay yun daw batang mataas ang anxiety ay kadalasan mababa isang performance. Gusto mo lang i-test kung totoo rin ito sa mga estudyante mo sa Pilipinas, sa senior high school, sa math. So ano ang iyong alternate hypothesis? Perbon.
Wala, sir.
Oh, alam mo to, math to. Higher anxiety, lower performance. So paano mo i-state yun as alternate hypothesis? Sabi ni Sir Jetro kanina, hindi natin sure, kaya nakalagay lang ay there is significant relationship between students' anxiety and exam performance. Eh meron kang a priori expectation. At ito yung gusto mong paniwalaang totoo. Na pag anxious daw ang bata, negative ang result, mas mababa ang exam. So how do you say that as an alternate hypothesis?
There is a negative relationship.
Very good. There is a negative relationship, then tuloy mo lang. Naintindihan ba yan? Bakit niya sinabing negative? Mathematically, ang ibig sabihin ng negative is, pag mataas ka sa X, mababa sa Y. Or inverse, pag mababa ka sa X, mataas ka sa Y. Depende yun sa variables, ha? Dito kasi, parang meron tayong nakikitang negative relationship kasi anxiety. Alam nga namang ninenervyos ka na, mataas pa yung exam mo, di ba? Pero kung ang variables ay parehas na positive, for example, motivation and exam, then ang ating alternate, most likely there is a positive, significant relationship naman. Okay? Is that clear? So yung isang alternate ay non-directional, then posible din na directional or one-tailed ang ating alternate hypothesis. Okay? Then we have the second example. Paano naman yung hypothesis for ex post facto? Ulitin ko, i-state mo lang siya ng declarative. Ang research question natin, is there a difference between the digital literacy scores? Ba't ang dami namang between? Sorry. On muna pala. Is there a difference on the digital literacy scores between science high school students and regular secondary students? Ang null hypothesis natin, there is no significant difference on the digital literacy. In other words, pag binigyan ko daw sila ng test, parehas lang ang kanilang makukuha. Mean science high school is equal to mean regular secondary students. Sir Jose Leonardo, can you state the alternate hypothesis na directional? And can you state the null hypothesis which is non-directional?
Wait lang po.
Ano muna? Non-directional muna.
There is
Sige lang, sir.
there's no significant difference on the digital literacy scores
Yung
between
null
science
hypothesis, sir, is there is no. So ano yung alternate hypothesis na non-directional?
There's negative.
Di non-directional therefore hindi mo alam.
There's significant difference
Yan,
on the
papalitan lang natin yung no,
Apo.
no? Tatanggalin lang natin yung no. Yun na yung non-directional alternate hypothesis. No, gawin mo nga siyang gawin mo siyang alternate. Meron kang a priori knowledge na yung science high school curriculum ay mas magaling sa digital literacy. O, paano mo yung sasabihin?
Yung digital literacy po yung mas okay.
Mas mataas daw yung digital literacy ng mga taga-science high school. So how do you say that? O Englishin mo lang sir yun na yung alternate hypothesis na directional.
The digital literacy score of the science high school is better than the regular secondary students.
Yun ang ating alternate hypothesis na directional. Tama. Mu Science High School is greater than mu regular secondary students. Kasi ang null mo, mu science is equal to mu regular. Ang alternate mo na null, ay ang alternate mo na non-directional ay science is equal to regular. Ang alternate mo na directional could either be science is greater than regular or science is less than regular. Naintindihan ba yun? Parang minsan parang common sense naman binabalik-baliktad lang. Ganun talaga yon. Babaliktarin mo kasi nga null yung isa. So pagka ni-reject mo, ang sagot yung kanyang alternate, yung kanyang kabaliktaran. Okay? And lastly, how do we state this one for quasi and true experimental research? So ang ating kaninang research question, is there significant difference between the post-test gains of the control and the treatment group? I-edit ko lang to ha. Lagyan ko ng on. Ang laging kadugtong ng difference ay on kasi doon mo sila kinukumpara. So it should be the DV. Is there significant difference on the post-test gains between? O, doon pala tayo magbi-between, no? Pagka nagkukumpara na tayo. Okay. Ma'am Clairmaine, pakibasa nga yung yung research question. Ma'am Clairmaine. Wala si Ma'am Clairmaine. Ma'am Gian, can you read the research question?
Research question, is there a significant difference on the post-test gains between the control group and treatment group?
And further, can you read the null hypothesis?
There is no significant difference on the post-test gains between the control group and treatment group.
Okay, can you give me the alternate hypothesis, which is non-directional?
Alternate hypothesis po is there is significant difference on the post-test gains between the control group and the treatment group.
Mathematically, paano mo ma'am yun express? Mathematically.
Yun po yung alternate, non-directional.
Oo, mathematically, ano yun? Sa equation, mathematical equation, paano mo yun gagawin? So yung null natin, there is no difference. Control is equal to treatment. What about your alternate na non-directional?
Non-direction. There is significance on the post-test gains between the control group and treatment group.
So mathematically, how do you express that?
Apo,
Mathematically, ma'am, paanong equation nun?
mathematically.
O, si Ross, si Ivan, ang
Sir,
tanong natin.
equal po ba?
Paano
Equal.
po?
Ang null hypothesis natin, there is no difference. Mathematically, control is equal to treatment. Yun yung mathematical counterpart ng there is no difference. So ang ating alternate na non-directional is there is significant difference. So how do we express that mathematically, Sir Ivan?
Sir, control group is not equal to treatment.
Okay, not equal.
Yes.
Diba?
Apo.
Eh naniniwala ka na mas magling yung experiment mo. How do you state that in alternate hypothesis?
Control control group is better than treatment group. Tapos,
Oh, hindi pwedeng better si control kung ang a priori mo ay mas magaling yung treatment mo, di ba? Yung experiment mo. So how do you say that?
treatment group is better than control group.
Okay. Or, dahil ginamit natin ng post-test gain, ang sasabihin mo doon ay, the post-test gain of the treatment group is higher than the post-test gain of the control group. Mathematically, mu treatment is greater than mu control. Siyempre, di ba? Nag-experiment ka. Ang tiwala mo, nandun sa yung experiment. Alam nga mag-alternate hypothesis ka na the control group is better. Siyempre, ang panindigan mo, kung ano yung inaaral mo, dahil yun ang proposal mo, it's better. Yun ang alternate. Pero siyempre, sa una, magnanal ka muna. Paduda ka pa, di ba? Parang pasweet ka pa. Parang alam mo yung ano yung counterpart nun sa lingwahe natin ngayon? What do you call that? Pabebe. Ano yung ibig sabihin ng pabebe? Yung parang alam naman niya, gano'n, alam naman niyang maganda yung outcome, maganda yung result, pero hindi, wala yan, walang ano yan. Walang effect yan, gano'n. Pero sa totoo lang, kung kunwaring doubtful lang siya that there is no. Pero ang gusto niyang i-prove talaga is yung alternate that there is. So if you are doing a quasi-experimental, you would have a priori expectation that your experimental treatment is better than your control group. Although ang null hypothesis mo, ano lang, parehas lang yan. There's no difference. But you are trying to forward an argument that your experimentation is better than the traditional one. Okay? I think that ends our presentation for tonight. Hanggang research question and hypothesis. Then meron akong writing activity. Basahin ko lang. Ay, sorry. No, hindi ko na share. Let me share it again. Pinost ko naman na pala, sorry. But I will post it also in our G class. Very simple lang tong writing activity. Do you see now the slide?
Yes.
Okay, so I have here a research problem. What you're going to do is you read the problem and then draw the conceptual model representing the given problem. I-drawing niyo muna. And then state the general statement of the problem. What are the specific research questions? And the null and alternate hypothesis. So mag-umpisa kayo sa drawing, parang ito. Ang unang sagot nyo ay drawing. Ito. Tapos, ito. Yan, statement of the problem, then specific statement of the problem. Tapos, ang ending nyo ay ganito. Pero merong alternate na kadugtong. Okay? So, ang research problem ay ganito. A researcher is investigating the effects of type of review conducted by the students and the availability of reference book to the test results in science. Ayan. Nagpa-exam daw sa science. Bakit may mas mataas? Bakit may mas mababa? So, sabi ng researcher, baka may kinalaman yung pagre-review nila at saka kung meron silang reference material. He, the researcher ito, baka sabihin nyo, lalaki yung researcher. The researcher is thinking that the best way to answer this is to compare the scores of students according to the type of review they had. May mga estudyante daw na nag-self-review, may mga estudyante daw na nag-peer review, at may mga estudyante nag-group review. Alin daw doon ang mas mataas ang science score? At pangalawa, gusto rin niyang malaman kung may possible effect yung availability of reference book. Gusto rin niyang i-compare yung performance ng mga may sariling libro at saka yung walang libro na sarili. So with that research problem, draw the model, state the general statement of the problem and its specific research question, and translate that specific research question into a null hypothesis and its alternate hypothesis. Ililabel nyo kung alin doon ang directional, alin ang non-directional. Pero isa lang yung problem. Sir John Ray, may clue ka kung anong quantitative design ito? Sir John Ray?
Ex-post facto po, sir.
Ah?
Ex-post facto po.
Bakit ex post facto?
Yung may book po and mamimili ka po ng may mga books and yung may mga walang book.
Parang hindi ko yata matanggap yun na paliwanag kasi tunog experimental din yun eh. Bakit ex post facto? Sige, I'll give you a chance to explain that. Dapat yung totoong sagot yung naaral ko na yan sa research, alam ko yan, ex post facto yan. O pag tinanong ka, bakit ex post facto? Kasi, sige, revise mo yung sagot mo. Sir John Ray.
Sorry sir, medyo malakas po yung kalang dito right now. Naririnig po ba ako?
Yes, loud and clear.
Ayan. So kasi sir, tapos na po the study or the students have already did their reviews with those who have books and those who do not have books. And your intention is to compare their performance or yes.
So, by
Their
definition,
test results, yes sir.
the causes of the science result has already existed.
Yes
Diba?
sir.
It happened already.
Apo.
Yon. So, yun ang sasagot natin kung bakit ex post facto. Hindi yung, sir, nagko-compare ng group. Kasi si experimental, nagko-compare din ng group yon. Okay? So, in this case, it is ex post facto because the possible cause of the differences in science scores as the DV has already occurred and we are trying to look it back. Ex post facto. Crucial na malaman natin, may clue na tayo, di ba? Sinagot na ni John Ray at tama, ex post facto ito. Kasi kung hindi mo alam na ito ay ex post facto, mamamali ka ng pag-i-state ng research question. Dahil, di ba, sabi natin kanina sa mga examples natin, the way we state the specific research question depends on the kind of quantitative research designs that we are trying to employ. So may guide na tayo. So malamang, ito ay comparison. Nagbigay naman ng clue, di ba actually? So kahit natanggalin ko ito, kahit natanggalin ko itong part na to, may clue ka pa rin na ex post facto. Kasi sabi niya, the type of review conducted by the students. In other words, it has already occurred. At hindi ito pwedeng experimental. Halimbawa, gawin ko ang experimental ito, type of review affects exam. So sasabihin ko, Von, Vivian, mag-review kayo on your own na, sarili nyo lang. Genre and friends, partner kayo. Gian and Mr. It's so and so, mag-partner kayo. Yung natira, mag-group. I-require ko. Gusto ko lang malaman kasi no, kung at the end of the exam ay sino ang mas effective. I cannot do that through experiment. Because some students prefer studying alone. Learning style yun eh. Some students prefer and they love studying and they can study better when they are in pairs. And some students are collaborators when they are group. Not because they want to cheat, but they learn better when they are in large group of students or in groups so that they can learn more from one another. So I cannot do that experimentally, but I can do that ex post facto. I cannot also do the availability of reference book and do it experimentally. Like, kayo group 1, bibigyan ko kayo ng sariling libro nyo. Kayong group 2, walang libro ha. O yung mga may libro, tanggalin ko yung libro. I cannot do that. Just to prove that having reference material of your own is better. But I can do it ex post facto. Mahina nga lang yung conclusion ko later kasi hindi naman ako nag-experiment. But that's the best way to address the problem. While we believe that strong manipulation of experimental designs are better in terms of results, may mga studies na hindi talaga pwedeng experimentation. So we do it ex post facto. Esther, ba't hindi correlational? O wala naman tayong dalawang variables na kino-correlate dito. Diba? Esther, ba't hindi descriptive? Ay hindi, gusto niya malaman yung effect eh. So it goes beyond descriptive. So it's not correlational, but it goes beyond descriptive, but it's not experimental, then it must be causal comparative. It's ex post facto. Okay, so is the assignment clear? So a single page submission would complete the assignment. May questions ba kayo?
Wala po,
Susunod nating
sir.
lesson, methods na tayo, no? Sampling, data instrumentation, data analysis. Yan, mabubuo niyo na yung proposal niyo. Okay? So, kung wala kayong katanungan, kumpleto na tayo dito. Can we take another picture of the class? Pagpunas lang tayo ng ng pawis at oiliness is next to ugliness na. Alam mo kung bangs katulad ni Sir Jetro na pwedeng pantakip nung nagniningning na na mantika. Kumakain na ako ng mais, nagugutom na ako eh. Kaya lang kahapon ko pa nabili to. Ngayon lang ako kumain ng mais at mani na binili the other day. Hindi pala masarap. Jomar, ang ganda naman ng constellation background mo dyan. Ano? Totoo bang ganyan sa Umingan? Nasa Umingan ka ba, Jomar?
Yes po, sir.
Oh, ganon ang langit namin sa Umingan. Gusto yung bumisita, ganon, no? nasa likod namin ang ano, constellation. Okay, Sir Jose, ayan. Ma'am Teresa, ano, pa-picture din para iba naman yung ano, yung positioning natin. Okay, print screen on my cue. Ma'am Christine, naglalakad ka ba?
Nasa tricycle po, sir.
O sabi mo sa tricycle para saglit, mag-picture lang ka mo. Para malinaw. Okay? 1, 2, 3, smile. Ayan. Okay? So, thank you for your time. Kain na tayo.